Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Blacksheep Podcast. We decided to come to a special episode today. There's a lot going on in the world. We felt like it was necessary for us to talk about this. It's a deep conversation. We got some big things coming today. So first off, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you could hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We got merch now, so the flock, we got stuff for you. Check that stuff out. All our socials are down in the description. And let's get right into it. How are we doing today, Tyler?
Doing good. About as good as you can be.
Yeah, it's a weird time. Hey, like I said, we got a special guest here today. It's one of our buddies. His name's Dre Hunt. How you doing today, Dre?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm
Can't
not doing
complain,
too bad, man. So we brought you in today because you offer a unique perspective. For background for anybody listening, why this is such a big deal. There was another cop-involved shooting with an unarmed African-American male. Sparked protests all over the nation. The sports world is involved. Yesterday, the NBA even boycotted all playoff games. Well, they did that today. We're recording this Thursday, August 27th. So it's a big deal. The sports world has literally stopped over the situation. This is something that's been going on for years. And what makes Dre so unique is he is an African-American male and an aspiring police officer. So he has perspectives. He has a dog in this fight. So we wanted to get his viewpoint on all this and talk through it, have this discussion, see if we can have a meaningful conversation because that's what it's all about. So I'll start off nice, hot, and heavy. As an African-American male and one that is also a cop, what is your response when you see these actions occur between police and African-American individuals?
Oh man, it's bad. Like it, it's to the point where people don't understand. Like I wear two hats, the police officer hat and then an African American hat. But here's the difference: it's I can take off my uniform, I can't take off my skin. So people don't understand that sometimes I even, actually, I just got hired by a police department down in Georgia. So I'm actually here now. I don't start work until the 8th, but um, it's hard because, the Black community looks to you and they're like, some people are like, yo, are you standing for this or are you against this? And it's hard to be an African American and a cop. Sometimes people call you an Uncle Tom because you are just a police officer. And I'm like, doesn't mean I'm, any less Black than you are just because of the career I've chosen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I assume it's tough. I am a minority. I know the skin isn't as dark as yours, so my perspective isn't quite the same as yours, but I am Caucasian and African American. So,
Right.
I mean, this affects me too, but not on the same level as you. So that's why I wanted to bring you in. I mean, I have family
Right.
who deal with this. I have a cousin who has dealt with this personally. So it's a thing that we have to talk about. And so that's what we're
Right.
doing. So in terms of because people, the biggest thing that these athletes are saying is we want change. So what is this change? Again, from both the cop perspective and the African-American male, how do you elect that we get to this position to where both parties feel comfortable in moving forward to where we can get to a place where this doesn't seem to be an issue that keeps reoccurring?
As I have always said, I believe that I think right now we have cops who just drive around and patrol and know nothing about the people in their community, which that creates that problem right there. You're trying to police people who you don't know. I think that once cops actually start doing proactive policing, getting out in the community and getting to know members of their community, like actually getting out and talking to people and not always driving around, and getting how getting their perspectives on life, especially in African American communities. Like where I live in Michigan, they have a predominantly white police department for a predominantly Black city. So, but those dudes, I kudos to those dudes because they actually get out and do what I'm saying. They get out, get to know the people of their community. They get to know who they're dealing with. Sometimes they deal with these people on a everyday basis. Sometimes it's a week to week basis, but they know what these people are going through. So their reactions to or their how they go about things isn't always going to be the same because they know the people of their community and people they're talking to and their situations. So, they're not always going to result to taking people to jail because they know that doesn't help.
So I can ask, since you're working in Georgia, are you from there?
No, I'm not from Georgia. I'm from Michigan.
So, saying what you just said, are you going to take the extra steps you can, do as much as you can to get to know the people in that city?
Absolutely, I have to. I have no. I mean, like to me, I don't have a choice, and especially with being new here, I don't really know anything about about where I am. So I have to get out and be proactive and get to know people. Like today, I spent some time just driving around, trying to familiar myself with the city that I'm in. I'm in Athens, Georgia. So I'm trying to familiar myself with the city, with the county, because I work for the county police department. So I'm trying to familiarize myself with the county and the streets and all that good stuff. So I'm actually out, talking to people. I'm trying to get to know kids. Well, I say kids because the biggest part of Athens is UGA. So I'm out talking to kids, getting their perspective on the city and how they feel about where they live and where they go to school. And then I go to the other side of town, talk to some people, how they feel and about the city and whatnot and what's going on in their city. So this is just me doing on my off time, and I'm not even, completely, I haven't even started work yet, and I'm doing this. I think, police officers, from my perspective, or how I feel about the community, should, actually get out, even on your off days. It doesn't hurt to talk to people. That's part of the job, is talking to people. So if you don't feel comfortable talking to people when you're not in uniform, then I don't understand how you can talk to people when you are in uniform. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So again, I mean, obviously this is a very complex situation. We know stuff doesn't happen overnight, and that's
Right.
why we have these conversations. Now we have, again, this is the intersection of sports and societal issues. It's now the forefront. It's never not going to be intersectional at this point. They're always
Right.
connected. And in theory, they kind of always have been, because throughout history, sports have led to other moments. So when we talk about that, we see these athletes saying, we demand change. What are some changes that could be made that help it? I know we hear about qualified immunity. We hear about police unions, how many strikes does a cop get, how investigations are handled. This is, again, we know it's complex. I, me personally, me and Tyler had this discussion yesterday. I said you can scream in the sky, change all you want, but you have to have, what is X, Y, Z? What has to happen for this to meet your your perspective of actual change? So what are we looking for? What do we want
You
to see?
know, they're calling for the defunding of police. I don't necessarily think that that's the complete answer. Sure, I mean, I don't even think that's the answer, actually, because regardless of where you are, what town you live in, what country you live in, there are police officers, and you will always need police. So defunding them is not necessarily, the way to go, but I understand it. So I understand that you want to defund the police to give more resources to the community. I understand that part of it, and if they can do it correct, come up with a absolute system like that works, I'm all for it. But if they can't, then there's no, just to get an immediate reaction. I think that's what's happening. People are calling for the defunding of police just to get an immediate uh, fix for the solution. But that's just a band-aid. That's not, going to solve problems down the road. So, I'm not too sure on. I mean, I definitely believe that community relations is huge, and but as far as like, you're talking about qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is basically that keeps officers from being sued for anything. So, for example, some person I pull them over, and I end up arresting them for DOI, and they want to come back and sue me because they said I did X, Y, and Z to them. So basically, at that point, the department is hiring a lawyer for me to fight this case, instead of me, out of my personal money, hiring a lawyer, which is going to cost me thousands of dollars. Obviously, I don't have a limited amount of salary. So imagine me doing this once a month or twice a month. I'm having to pay for a lawyer every time that I or someone wants to sue me personally because of what I do. So that's how the qualified immunity works. It just keeps you from paying for the legal fees and the lawyer and all that stuff. That's a
Absolutely.
simple. That's essentially what that is. Um, but what also people don't understand is that judges and lawyers actually have like full blown immunity. So it's like, if they do something wrong, they can actually really get off. Um, so let's talk about something. That's something that also needs to be talked about. Um, But I'm not too sure on what the actual solution is besides getting out and getting to know people in the community. And then police departments also kind of like the military. Sometimes police departments don't always use that all of the money that they have in their budget. So if you're not using all the money that you have in your budget, why not sacrifice some of that money and donate it to some resources that you may need in your community, because what those I think as a department, what those needs are. As a city government, where those needs are that need to be improved in your community. So why not allocate some of those funds that you have left over to those resources? So, but like I said, I'm not too sure on what the actual solution is. That's a lot.
Absolutely. So another thing, like kind of bridging off of that, we also see this might be dipping my toes too far. So please, Tyler, stop me if I get too crazy.
I got a question before you get too crazy.
All right, let's hear it.
This isn't really related to anything sports going on right now, but do you think there's a fear of black men just as police officers? Because there's a picture going viral now that has a white guy holding a gun on his hip, and the cops like trying to calm him down, like, hey, stay calm. And then there's the picture of the African American who the cop has his hand on his gun when he's just stopping him for a traffic stop.
Yeah, I do think that our skin color has been villainized, for sure. Why this cop is like, hey, no, don't go for your gun, while he's going for his gun is like, absolutely, like, if you were me, I mean, if you're going for your gun, I'm going for my gun. So to me, that is definitely a problem that our skin color has been villainized. And it's all based off the stereotypes. The stereotypes of black people are dangerous and whatnot. It's just all, whether it's conscious or subconscious, there is a bias there that has just been put out by America in general. So, whether you actually think about it, whether it's just in the back of your head, it's still there that black people can be dangerous and whatnot. So I do think that's a huge problem. And skin color has definitely been villainized, and I'm not sure how that's going to be fixed either. I think it just has to be, in my personal opinion, it's a generational thing. Once this generation of baby boomers who actually really control our government, if you think about it, everybody's in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who are in government leadership. Once they're gone, I think this younger generation, such as us, can take over and fix the country how it should be. If that makes sense.
All right, Josh, you can go off the deep end now. I just had to ask that one question.
All right, let's do it. So this is going back to sports and law and the judicial process. So usually when an event like this occurs, it's instantly going, especially something so high profile, instantly going towards another outside investigation, somebody coming in that's not internal to that, to make sure that this gets done right. How do you feel as a law enforcement officer about professional athletes getting involved and jumping the gun before the judicial process actually takes place, not allowing it and saying justice for XYZ? When, I mean, that's what I'm saying, it's muddy. Do we want justice or our form of justice? And how does that feel to somebody who could possibly be going through it when we don't know all the facts?
Yeah, I think, with this whole, thing that went on in Wisconsin, I'm sure you guys saw on Facebook, I was like going crazy. Like, people were like, oh, he had a knife, he had a gun. Before, any of the investigation stuff came out, were you 100% sure that he had a knife in his hand, first of all? No, that picture that they were showing, I couldn't tell that if it was a knife or not. It looked like an object. I couldn't tell what type of object it was. When people were like, well, that's a knife, he had a gun in the car and blah, blah, blah. So I definitely think waiting for all the facts to come out before we jump the gun to assuming things, because obviously it comes to find out, they've released some information that was a knife in his hand. So according to that knowledge, he was a threat to police officers. Um, so I think it's our form of justice that we want. We want these people to be immediately arrested, especially police officers. We want these people immediately arrested, immediately fired without having all the facts. So I definitely think it's our form of justice that we want, instead of letting the judicial system work, which, by the way, has proven several times that it doesn't work in our favor, whether the
Absolutely.
shooting is justified or not justified. So that's why people are kind of like, F the judicial system, because it don't work. It doesn't work for us. It works against us every time. So, and there are several cases like the Fernando Castillo case that I followed closely. That officer wasn't fired, nor did he go to jail. Why? I mean, he shot a dude who told him, I have a firearm and I need to reach to get my wallet, which that's what you were demanding. And once he reached, you shot him. Usually, and as far as I know, and I've been in the police world, not as a police officer, just as a police explorer, which is learning the job and whatnot. I've done plenty of ride-alongs, and I've talked to plenty of police officers. In my experience, usually, and to my knowledge, usually the people who tell you they have guns aren't the people you should be worried about. It's the people who tell you they don't have guns, the people you should worry about, and they have guns. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
usually,
So, oh wait, keep going. Yeah, and I'll
go
branch
ahead,
off of that. I was
go
going to
ahead.
say, so what you're, and which I want people to understand is, because I hate this argument of, we'll see what happened here. Why couldn't that happen here? And I think me and you can relate because we're both also military veterans. The way I respond to a combat situation is not going to be exactly the same that you would. So why do we
Exactly.
expect this from individuals on the same? Like, if you could point to this cop did this and did this and acted in that way, then you have a clear line that the cop crossed with these different scenarios. But we don't
Right.
seem to be doing that. And it seems like, I mean, like Philando Castile, awful. I mean, clearly that cop acted in the wrong. There was something going on with that cop. He should have been charged or whatever. But then there's other cops who don't react to that same situation in the same way. How do we discern from, how do we, how do I put this? Because I don't want to sound like I'm downing the situation. But how do we make that discernment from this cop is clearly racist to there was like
Like
it
probable
was,
cause,
yeah,
justified.
yeah,
Oh,
and do it
that's
fairly.
tough. That's tough, man. Like, because there are plenty of officers where I'm like, why is this dude even a cop, or how did this dude become a cop? It's just how they
Yes.
act and how
How do we
they
fix that?
talk to people. You know, I think there has to be a better vetting process with how they do it. But, like right now, I mean, it can't even. I mean, honestly, I don't know how harder it can get, because becoming a cop is not easy. Like, for example, there's psychological, there's a PT test. I'll start from the beginning. There's a PT test, there's a written test, there's an interview, there's a background investigation, there's a polygraph, there's a psych evaluation, there's a medical evaluation, and then there's possibly another interview. So there's 8 steps to this hiring process. And I I physically, like, I actually know of police officers who have taken polygraphs and have lied, whether it be a small lie or whatever, and still passed. So, like, that's obviously not working, because the question may be, are you, do you have a bias against people who don't look like you? It's a yes or no question. You can say no, but you really do, and still get in. So I don't know how much harder the process could be, honestly, than what it is right now. And how do we improve it? I just think better vetting and background investigations, dig a little bit deeper to, you know, but when people call for your, uh, what do you call them, references, of course they're going to talk you up. They're not going to talk down on you. You don't put people who are going to talk down on you for your recommendation, for your recommendations or references. So, I really, that's a hard question, honestly, because I've been thinking, the same thing about how do we weed these people out. It's just hard. It's really hard to do.
Like you said in your earlier response about people kind of jumping the gun when it comes to letting all the facts come out before they make their assumptions or see something horrible and jump to, well, this guy's a racist. He clearly had his back turned. You shot him 7 times. So do you think maybe that people jump to these accusations so quickly is because of fatigue? They're just tired of seeing it over and over again happen to African American people or people of color in general?
Yeah, I think it is. It's just I'm tired of seeing this because no one truly really knows like someone's intentions or their, or I should say no one knows someone's heart, you know, no one knows what they're actually thinking. So I can't just jump the gun and say, oh well, he's a racist because you shot a black guy in the back. I don't I don't truly know him, so I can't make that assumption. I'm just making that assumption based off his actions that he did. Now, that officer, you know, who like this is how I see it. Like the officer could have a black wife for all we know, you know what I mean? So it's not like we know that the officer is racist and blah blah. You're just saying it because of his position and what he did. Now, I will say, as far as that goes, there's just a blunt history of police officers being racist. The history of police in the Black community is not one that's really ever discussed because of the racism part of it. And you know, this goes back when I'm educating people on the topic. I'm like, do you know the history of police and how police started in America? Police in America started with slave patrols and slave catchers. You know, so and then my dad pointed out a good point earlier. You know, black in slavery days, you know, a police officer, he was like police overseer, officer. So they were the overseers of slaves essentially, and then they just changed the name to police officer at that time. And it's just a dark history with Black community and police that needs to be addressed. And then, you know, once we address it, like, yeah, there's this history there, and we're going to take these steps to fix these problems. Once we can take the steps to fix the problem and answer the why questions, I always say that, answer the why is this happening? You know, what's the root cause of these problems? Once we can start really digging in and having these uncomfortable conversations, then I think we can start coming up with a solution.
Speaking of solutions, he knows where I'm going. So I have proposed.
Mhm.
We don't know if this is ever going to happen. Everybody likes to say, I mean, whatever. I made a joke on Twitter yesterday. I tweeted, I said, hey, yo, Donnie, reach out to LeBron James. Let's get this conversation
I've
started.
seen that.
And I even made the joke of like, yo, Emmanuel Acho, because he has that YouTube channel, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man.
Black man.
Let's take that to the White House. Because in my perspective, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, when you do that, you're painting him in a corner. So he's going to show you exactly who he is at that moment. People like to say, oh, he won't change. But do we know that? We can't. But then on the other hand, you have athletes straight up refusing
Right.
to even entertain that option. So how do we get through, you know, this divide where we don't talk to anybody who could possibly help us by having that assumption that they're not going to anyway? Like what? I
You
mean,
know,
it's a tough conversation.
I just think that's a mindset there. It's like I want change, but I'm not going to talk to the person who could give me that change. To me that's just kind of stupid to have to be thinking that I want change, but I'm not going to talk to the person who can make that change. Like I just think that's idiotic, honestly, and I just think that's bad on their part, bad on their thinking. Sure, you may not personally like him, but he's in a position to help you out. So you have to put your personal feelings aside for this person in order to get what you want. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and that was basically how I went about it.
I
Was I
guess
mean,
my counterpunch to that would be, would it be that hard for him to come out and maybe not this one yet because we haven't figured out all the information, but with like any of the cases recently, he could come out and say, I stand with you or anything. We're looking to fix this. We're looking to change. He hasn't done anything like that. Do you think
Yeah,
that he would?
that's hard to say. Like I would have thought, you know, in my personal opinion, with this being an election year, that when George Floyd happened, that like he would have been like, all right, black folks or black community, I'm with you on this. This is wrong and this shouldn't have happened. And you know, he could have came up with his brilliant speech to bring everybody together in the world, but he never came out with that. He always likes to, you know, tweet and talk from his head, which always is not the best for him. He has a bunch of speech writers, and like, why don't you just use them? You know, I can't really say if he would or not.
And that's
No,
kind of
yeah.
my thing. I like him as a president. He does things that are good for creating jobs and things like that. But I think he kind of uses divide to kind of make himself stronger in a way, in a
That's
weird way.
that's in my opinion, it's part of his platform. Like when like in my opinion, I find it hard. Uh, like at the beginning when he was campaigning, when he was saying all the you know, all the terrible stuff about Hispanics and the Hispanic community and whatnot, and you know, people who come over the border and whatnot. I'm like, but Hispanics are voting for you. Like, what did he not say? Like, that could have turned you off to him at that point. But you know, same thing with blacks though. You know, there are some things there are some things that he said about, you know, the black community, about, you know, people of color, and I'm like, eh. But you know, at the same time, you know, there are those, you know, black conservatives who would say, you know, he's done this for the black community, this and this and this. And they also would say that, you know, some people have even said that he's the most pro-black president we've ever had. You know, that's their personal opinion. But I would say, you know, you know, you would have to actually prove these things to me, which I'm willing to sit down for anybody to try to prove these things to me. But you also have to be willing to listen to what I have to say as far as like the black unemployment or whatnot, you know, or unemployment in general. Everybody's like, oh, it's the lowest it's ever been. And I'm like, yeah. Coming to the sports, I'm going to use a sports analogy for this. So it's like, did he do that by himself, or did he have help from previous administration? So if I'm a head coach, and let's say I'm a head coach, and I leave a school and go to another school, and
You're Mark
I
Jackson
then
with the Warriors.
right, so
Jeez.
I leave and go to another school, and I the same year that I came to that school, I win the state championship or the national championship. Can I take all the credit for that, or do I give some credit to the previous coach?
So I have a nice little counter to that one
Yeah,
because I mean, me and Tyler talk all the time, so I brought this
yeah,
up. So, I mean, we hear the athletes say all the time, like, we're tired. We're tired that this continues to happen. They brought up the analogy that Bill Russell protested in 1961 about the same issues. So from 1961 to 2020, that's how many administrations have been able to fix it. But now we're tired. I mean, even again, we go back, like, you don't want to sit down with Donald Trump because you don't appreciate him. Okay, that's fine. Nobody's telling you have to, obviously. But if you like the last guy, why didn't you take the opportunity then? There were some high profile cases then. How about before him? I mean, we're tired, but it seems like the people who are tired are the same ones who keep pushing back. I mean, if I'm wording that right, I apologize if I'm offending anybody. I'm just trying to articulate it. What is it going to take to where we actually come together and try to get this done? Those in power, those who have the platform. Is this it? I mean, hopefully. I despise athletes telling me to vote because they're telling me to vote for a certain person. Don't do that. Like, that's not going to do anything clearly.
right.
So please tell me, like, we keep saying we're tired, but we're not willing to, you know, hit that alarm clock to wake us up.
Um, I totally agree with everything you just said. Like, you know, it's been a long time. We've been saying that we've been tired, and now, you know, what's the difference here? I don't believe. I mean, there really is no difference as far as, you know, what's going on. The athlete, you know, obviously athletes are changing and whatnot. The culture is changing, but unless you're willing to take that seat at the table, nothing's going to change. Like, if this is just going to be a continued cycle until you take the seat at the table. So, I mean, in my opinion, I would be telling LeBron James, if I could talk to him, hey,
Hey, LeBron,
go
listen.
have the seat at the table. Listen, go take the seat at the table in the Oval Office and have a conversation. Let him see your point of view. Let him see where you're coming from. The people around him, they're not talking about this on a daily basis like we are. They have, to them, they have bigger problems, other than what's going on in America. But I don't know when they're going to officially wake up and understand that this is our opportunity to have a seat at the table, and let's take it.
I think Milwaukee did a great thing by reaching out. They reached out to some people in the governor's office, from what I saw. That's a good first step.
Right.
Yes, I love that.
Do we have to count on athletes, or can all of these people just get together? Maybe Trump calls a high-profile athlete.
In my opinion, this goes both ways. Trump absolutely can reach out, but the way that people can argue that is it's these athletes that are screaming for the change. So it's like my child is screaming for a toy that's right next to him, but they don't want to grab it. They want me to grab it for them. You get what I'm saying? It's like these athletes are screaming for this to happen, but they don't want to take the steps for that to happen. I mean, I know they all do amazing things in the community. I'm not bashing anything that LeBron James does. He's an awesome dude who's done a lot of awesome things for the city of Akron, the city of Cleveland, and kids all around America. There's no challenging that at all. But it seems like for this thing, I mean, the NFL is kind of working towards there with the Players Coalition, but it just seems like they don't want to take that big step that they know they need to get done. Like, this is what has to happen. We're going to keep telling you this is what needs to happen, but we don't want to take that step.
Right. I think
it's really weird.
Like, there are times, there are articles where I've seen that. Don't get me wrong, like, there have been some very influential Black people to have a seat at the table, but I don't think this was the forefront of the conversation. Like, Ray Lewis has met with the president. Steve Harvey's met with the president. There are countless people, Black famous people, of celebrities who have met with the president. Was this part of the conversation? I don't know. But I think.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've seen, I mean, back to the whole change thing. We've seen, who knows, maybe it's because he is a fan, but Kanye met with him and got a woman released from prison. So could we not try to at least approach the situation like, hey, this is where we're at. And then if he doesn't do it, you clearly have a base like, hey, we did our part. He failed his.
Right.
So now, go vote. Go get him out. He's clearly not there for us.
Right. And that's crazy though. Like, Kanye can get a seat to the table, but nobody else wants to take the seat at the table, and then they want to bash Kanye West for taking that seat at the table. I'm like, I mean, you can't have it both ways. He accepted his invitation and he took it. So you could have an invitation. All you gotta do is just ask. And all the players who, from the Super Bowl and from NBA, they turn down. Every national champion goes to visit the White House. They turn down the visit to the White House. Like,
yes, like that's even an invitation you have to ask for. You have his ear at that point.
Yeah.
Like, again, I don't want to sound cynical, but like I mentioned the previous administrations. So instead of doing the mannequin challenge with Obama, how about we try to sit down and have this talk and get something done?
Yeah.
It's a joke. Right. I mean, it's lighthearted, but seriously, like, you have this invitation, and these guys are role models. So imagine what you can show children. LeBron James and Donald Trump clearly do not like each other. Publicly, they despise each other, but they can come together for a common good. And imagine how that resonates throughout all of America, because we clearly, I mean, there's division there. So what better way to try to at least do something?
And
Right.
I don't know the root of this. I don't know what started the division between Trump and LeBron. I don't know if it was before the kneeling happened, or did that division come from Trump coming out and saying, you stand for the anthem or we will not watch what you're putting on the field, basically.
Oh, that's absolutely where it occurred.
Yeah.
And we can get into that topic right now if we want to like transition to that. The whole because me and you are both veterans, and I think we
Right.
have different perspectives. And then
Mhm.
Tyler has his own perspective from somebody who's on the outside.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I can definitely point to that because Trump was very vocal in how he despised that act, but he's not. People act like he took it and ran with it, but it was a problem well before then. And if you look at the ratings of the last 5 years in the NFL, there's a clear drop off in 2016 and 17, and then it rises up after that. There's a clear correlation to what happened after 2017.
Yeah,
A certain
Mahomes got drafted.
individual, yeah, and a certain individual is no longer in the league. But I mean, so it's a touchy subject, and like I said, we can get on it. Nobody's ever going to be happy about it because people have
Right.
individual feelings, and that's okay. So how do you feel about that stance he took, and your regards to that protest in terms of protesting the flag and the national anthem?
So I have a very historical, unique perspective to this because at this point, I'm sure you can relate to this. I was just talking to someone earlier who's a vet as well. Particular, I believe this goes back to the beginning during the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, and all those great wars. Uh, what at the moment were they fighting for during those wars? Civil War and Revolutionary War, they were fighting for freedom and the rights of the people. Now, what particularly does kneeling do? It's a right that people have. So if they're fighting for the rights and freedoms of the people, you can't be upset because you don't agree with it. They're not wrong. It's their right to do it, which that's what people who fought during those wars are fighting for, the rights and freedoms of the people. Now the flag, to me, I'm all for kneeling because again, I believe that that's what people actually fought and died for. I don't believe that people fought and died for just the simple fact of red, white, and blue. They were fighting for the rights and freedoms of their family members. And so I'm all for kneeling because that's the true meaning. Like you fight for the rights of the people. People have the right to do that. They have a right to kneel or stand for the anthem. So I can't say that I'm against it because it's them using their rights as they are as they can and are able to.
I will say from my perspective, when Kaepernick first started to kneel, I didn't get it. I didn't see any plans, I guess I'd say, other than to raise awareness to this certain situation, this topic, this uncomfortable situation for a lot of people to digest. But then he comes out with like pigs on his socks and stuff. So I'm like, I don't think dividing people even more is a good way to find a solution to this. So that's at that point, I was like, well, I don't agree with this. I just don't see the point in basically two sides going to war when we could all join together and hear people out. But now I kind of understand it because it seems like they're trying to create a plan. They're working for change. It doesn't seem like all empty promises, I guess you could say. Which, looking back on it now, I can't hate Kaepernick for doing it because he was the one that started all this and got the uncomfortableness out of the way for them to be able to do it without being bashed. If you think back a couple of years ago, there was, I think his name was Bruce Maxwell in the MLB. He's the first player to ever take a knee in the MLB, and he got absolutely crushed for it. And now you look at baseball and everybody's doing it. So it's kind of good to see, honestly.
Yeah, definitely a step in the right direction as far as everybody now understanding it, and like I said, to the Black community, this is nothing, like what's happening is nothing new, because it's been happening since the beginning of America. Now people are just now starting to realize that when I talk about the history of police, like police have been brutalizing and killing Black men and women since the beginning of America. When it comes to slave patrols, when it comes to lynchings, like it's been happening, and police were letting it happen at the time as well, when it was just civilians. And then, you talk about Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday, there's a peaceful protest. They're walking over a bridge, and the police are like, no, you can't do that. And so they release their dogs, and they start beating them. They start spraying them with fire hoses, just all for a simple protest. This happened in the 60s. If you, the Senator John, I can't remember his last name. That senator, there was a whole documentary about that I watched. I was like, wow, this is nothing new. Like, I'm from Michigan, so I was in Michigan during the quarantine, where they had, this is how I seen it. Majority white people were going to the state capitol, protesting for their rights to do whatever they wanted to do, and move about the state as they wanted to. They not only go to protest, they went to this protest armed. And there are videos that I've seen. They're standing in the state capitol, with weapons, yelling in the face of state troopers, doing all of this during this, during this global pandemic where the states are closed. But here we are, couple months later, Black people are now taking the forefront for protest with their megaphones and their signs and their voices, and are now met with police in riot gear. But police weren't in riot gear when people actually had the potential to be dangerous with guns. That's just an interesting perspective that I've seen. If that, sound like, there is a reason why that whole protest happened, just from that example right there. And I'm glad that people are now understanding it. Like that baffles me, actually.
From off of that, so my perspective, I mean, I've stated this from the beginning, the method and the message are not mutually exclusive. Just because, like, at the time it was Kaepernick knelt, but then you had Malcolm Jenkins who held up the fist in the air. I was more geared towards Malcolm Jenkins, respectfully, because, again, my feelings about kneeling are completely yours. I'm not against people kneeling, but it does make me feel a certain type of way. And that's okay. And I'm a vet. I fought for your right to kneel. That's awesome. And there's other people who share that same sentiment. Just because they're against kneeling, they're against the message. But it seems like it warped into that exact sentiment, where if you were against kneeling, you are now a racist. But that's not the case at all. And we have to be able to acknowledge that that's not the case. Like we had, and then it got to the point where, like the NBA, when they opened their bubble, everybody knelt. And then there was Jonathan Isaac, who did not kneel. He was the first player not to kneel for the national anthem. And it got to the point where a reporter, an African-American reporter, asked an African-American male if Black Lives Matter. Like, that is to where we got, because it had gone so far the other way.
Right.
So without conversation, we can't have that. And it's really, I don't know, it bothered me, because it was literally over the freedom to do whatever. And it shouldn't have been that way. And I hate that people, like Nate Boyer was the reason that Kaepernick knelt, and people use him as that example. 2 points on that. Nate Boyer personally would never kneel. He never has. He preferred Kaepernick didn't. But even if he did, he doesn't speak for everyone else, if you get what I'm saying. Like, everybody's like, well, a Green Beret told him to kneel. Okay. Like, LeBron doesn't speak for every African-American. I don't speak for every mixed person. Tyler doesn't speak for every white person. So why do we use that in order to push our narratives? So we just got to be careful of mixing that up. Like, it just because you don't agree doesn't mean you are against it. We have to really
kind of coming to your point on that, and just because I don't, or people are for kneeling, doesn't mean they hate America. Like, they have made those two, they've made those two sentiments the same. It's like, just because I agree, just because I'm for kneeling, or, I don't have a problem with them doing it, doesn't mean I hate America. Like, just because I have this, this view of America that's different from yours, doesn't make you more of an American than I am. You know what I mean? I call that, when that happens, I call that made up patriotism. Like, you're trying to say that you're more of American than I am because you stand for the flag, or, I mean, I've never knelt for the flag at all, but I'm not against it either. So
Yeah, I mean, the flag gives me a fuzzy feeling, and that's okay if it doesn't give you
yeah,
that same one. But we're in
right,
this together.
of course, and the thing is like, when people say, "Oh, people have called me a racist."
Same.
I'm like, you don't even know me. You can't know me if you're calling me a racist, like, at all. If only you knew where I grew up and stuff, right? And how I grew up. Sound like, when people call me a racist, I just shake it off and I just laugh, like, you have no clue, what I've been through, when I've done. And sometimes, because it really gets under my skin when that happens. So I'm like, hell, if anything, I'm more of American than you are, because I serve my country and I'm a cop. What do you like? Have you served your country at all? No. Oh, okay. I'll just be quiet after that. Like, 'cause that's just how much that gets under my skin sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah, it kind of puts like white people in kind of a tough perspective. Like I have a mixed sister, so I try
yeah,
to, promote Black Lives Matter and things like that. And I try to speak out again about also not dividing any race, any doesn't matter. And I get told that white people shouldn't have an opinion other than Black Lives Matter, and that's all we should say. So it's kind of like I can't do anything right, so I'm kind of just stuck where I have to be silent. And I don't like this.
I am glad that, because this is what it's going to take, actually, for not only just black and whites, but everybody who is an American coming together and fighting against this, this systemic racism, the inequality, and, police brutality. Like, someone made a good point the other day, and it was like, sometimes, white people are shot more than black people by police. So why aren't white people against police brutality? I'm not saying that, it's not justified or whatever, because I don't know the case. I just thought that was an interesting point that they made. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. I mean, it kind of makes sense in a way. But no, I'm glad you're not quiet. I advocate for Black Lives Matter all the time on social media. Some people are like, "You're a cop and you're advocating, or you want to be a cop and you're advocating for Black Lives Matter? Isn't that a conflict of interest?" I'm like, conflict of interest? No, you thinking that is part of the problem. Like, I can support Black Lives Matter and still be a cop and support police. So if you think I can't do both,
Yeah, and
then you're part of the problem.
that's another discernment. Like I already talked about, the message and the method aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. There's a difference between the organization and
The
the
movement,
message. Yes, you have to
right?
be, and I mean, this is what this is all about. This is what we're doing this tonight for. Conversation, people. Talk to your neighbor. Talk to somebody who's hurting. Let them see your perspective. You tell them, you listen to their perspective. Build from there. I would be lying if I said I held the same sentiments that I had 4 years ago, or 8 years ago, or 10 years ago.
For sure.
Uh, Marcellus Wiley, I mean, I've listened to a couple things he said the past couple of days, and he says, my expertise is my experience. I can't judge your expertise because that's your experience. We've all been through different things. We've all seen different things. Like, don't stop telling people to shut up and be quiet. You don't know what they've been through, what they're doing. Like, come on, listen to each other. You don't get
On
anything from
that
telling each other to shut up.
on that point, where I think another problem, where this discourse comes, is that when you have people, African Americans or people of color, talking about systemic racism and the inequality, people, or white people, want to go and try to disprove my experiences or their experiences. I'm like, why are you trying to disprove something that I lived? You're not going to disprove that to me because I lived it. It happened to me. So stop trying to disprove it. And I think that's the point of just where people just need to, where or people do need to shut up and just listen and stop trying to always, prove a point.
I think a big divide comes from everybody's not real like clear on what they mean. Like some people say Black Lives Matter, and some people take that as, oh, you hate all cops. And some people say all lives matter, and they take that as all you hate all black people. Black lives don't matter. So it's like people need to have a clear message in what they say, because obviously in every job, it doesn't matter what it is, there's going to be bad people in every single job. You can work at a speedway and you can be working with a mass murderer and not know it. So it's like there's bad people in every job. If I say Black Lives Matter, I don't hate cops. It just needs to be more clear and consistent on what each side is going for.
Yeah. I read on the Black Lives Matter website, the organizational website, that, they just wanted, this is just a portion. There's a lot on their website that I don't particularly agree with, but that's what distincts the Black Lives Matter movement from the Black Lives Matter organization. Because like you were saying, I totally believe that these things are two different distinct things. But essentially, if you can just get over what the organization has said and just stick to the basics of what Black Lives Matter is, hey, Black Lives Matter, we're talking about equality and justice for all. That's all. If you can just get that message, that's all you need to take away from that. Get away from talking about the organization. Just stick with the Black Lives Matter. We're talking about equality and justice for all. It's that simple.
I like it. All men are created equal.
Exactly.
America's not perfect. It wasn't always perfect. It never will be perfect, but we can be perfect people, or at least attempt to.
Now's the best chance to educate yourself. Everybody out there is willing to talk. I see people on Twitter all the time. If you want to discuss this with somebody of a different race, feel free to slide into my DMs. We can talk about this. Now is a great time to get out there and change your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Social media is not the world.
Yeah.
Please
Right.
Please go out and talk to somebody not on the internet.
Man, I'm actually getting tired of social media, honestly. I was contemplating earlier just deleting my Facebook or, closing my Facebook for a while. Like, it's getting too crazy, with the whole shooting of the whole young dude who shot at, who killed those two people in Wisconsin. I'm like, this is getting too crazy.
Everything's so messy. Then people are commenting on messes that aren't cleaned up. We don't even know how big the mess is.
Yeah.
We got to be careful what we talk about.
Definitely. And it all boils down to the facts. Like, people, I've seen a video of this guy who was trying to justify the shooting before, the police came out and, made their statements. I'm like, how do you know all this? How do you know all this information? Like, I don't even know this information. And I've been trying to, research and dig up some stuff, but I could not. As far as that particular day and that particular moment, I didn't have all the facts. So I was just preaching to other people, wait till the facts come out. Stop. Unless you can tell 100% certainty that this is what it is, and you were there and you knew exactly what was happening, just be quiet. Like, I think that's part of the society now. Like, it's how I was, someone was saying it was guilty before proven innocent. So you're guilty until they say otherwise.
Cancel culture.
It's messy.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
I found it how people before they knew any facts, they were justifying the police shooting and criminalizing the black male before they knew the facts. But now on this hand of the young shooter, they're trying to justify his side of the situation. I'm like, okay, so pretty much no matter, I mean, as far as I know, no person of color was involved in that incident. But as far as I know, I'm like, so the person who is the actual murderer, you justify that over here, and then the person who's who at that point in time didn't have any of the facts, was innocent, you villainize that person. I'm just confused at what's going on, honestly, at this point, and how the world is
So that
thinking. How did
happens.
they come up with this?
Yeah, it's again that comes. I mean, we've talked about it the whole time.
Right.
Just people take a snippet and run with it.
Right.
You got. I mean, the whole. Yeah, we just gotta wait till the facts come out.
You know,
Right.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because I wanted to know how you felt about, say, George Floyd, for instance. You know, as soon as all the stuff comes out about him, oh, well, he was on this drug and he had this in his system. And it's like, at the same time, we get it. If the person is a criminal, they're a criminal. If they're doing something illegal, they're doing something illegal. But does him being on, what was it, fentanyl?
Yeah.
Does him being on fentanyl mean he needs a knee in his neck for 9 minutes? I just don't understand how you can justify
That's right.
a person being a criminal, meaning they need to lose their life.
You have to be able to discern the humanity.
Yeah.
No matter what this person did. Like, I mean, same with George Floyd. He had a bad past. Clearly things that normal people wouldn't be celebrated for. Jacob Blake, bad past. But it's the whole, we have to be able to discern that these are humans at the same time.
Exactly.
I mean, these facts come up and it does affect the way a cop approaches you. It will affect the way that they handle a situation. But there still has to be, it's a split-second decision. I'm not saying anything is right or wrong. George Floyd was a clear version of human life. There's no reason for a knee on the neck for 9 minutes. But even in case, I mean, Tyler will tell you, I said, let's wait, because it's just one of those things. You have to wait, no matter what. I mean, that was, George Floyd's a clear, again, that's murder, no matter what. But like in all these cases, you have to wait, and then you have to be able to look at both sides.
I think the biggest
Everything
thing
matters in these situations.
I think the biggest thing at this point is, because I always see people say, "Oh, he just should have complied," and blah blah blah. I want to make everybody aware that non-compliance does not justify deadly force. You don't,
Thank you.
you don't, you don't shoot your kid because they don't listen to you, do you? Absolutely not. So your kid would be non-compliant, so you're going to shoot them because they don't listen to you. That's basically what you're saying, that because he didn't listen, he deserved to be killed. And that's not true.
And we
Nobody
can't scream.
deserves to die.
We can't scream
Exactly.
all lives matter and then get mad that not care that somebody died because they were on fentanyl. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we gotta be able to separate what you feel about the person to what actually happened.
Yeah, for sure.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, it is somebody's son, it is somebody's daughter, it's somebody's husband who is now getting vilified in the media. It's somebody's son who's now getting vilified in the media, and that's police and suspect, or how, whatever you want to. I don't know. I want to make it as respectful as possible, but yeah, like how George Floyd and that cop. I mean, they all have family. No matter how you feel about each individual, you got to be able to recognize that, like, yeah, they both made mistakes. Their cop is an evil bastard, but we'll keep that on. But yeah, I mean, in the Jacob Blake situation, you have Jacob Blake. He has a family that is watching him getting villainized, and you have who has a family watching him getting villainized. Neither of them expected to be in that position that day.
Well, like I said, you'll have to go, look it up. But last I read, the Department of Justice went and investigated that, and they determined that he did have a knife. And now, with that being said, this does turn into, I'm still not, because again, just by that one fact, I'm not speaking on the entire thing, but just by that one fact, deadly force was present. It could have, that's something that could have happened because of that. No, I'm not justifying, I'm not saying anything else, but I'm just letting people know that you have a knife, I have a gun. You've all heard of the saying, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. So now, did he have a gun in the car? Hell, I don't know. I'm not going to say he did. I'm not going to say he didn't.
That's stuff we don't know.
I'm just, right.
And
but,
that's the same in every case, and that's why we're so heavy on waiting for everything. Because it started out with innocent bystander, innocent African American male gunned down by police.
Right.
Awful situation. And then it turns into the audio comes out. Maybe not. And then we got this.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't justifying either side. Again, it's a human life that should not be tampered with such delicacy.
Correct.
7 shots, probably excessive. But you can look
opinion, at that close range, just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So
there's no way you're
again,
missing.
it changes. It was 7 shots, but from how many cops? Because again, I mean, 7 shots from 2 guns is a lot different than 1 cop unloading a full clip.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, there's so many things. These issues are so complex. We have to just sit back, listen, and then react.
Right. And go ahead, Tyler.
This came to attention, 2-3 days ago?
Yeah.
And the story's already been changed. First, he was breaking up a fight between 2 females, which everybody came out and reported on that. Even Anthony Davis and athletes like that came to say, oh, he was just breaking up a fight. And then it comes out that he was trespassing. So it's like this story keeps changing. It's just a fluid situation. And all the stories get mixed up. So it's like, oh, we showed you he wasn't really this innocent guy. And it's just like,
yeah, and then now you have 2 opposing sides, like the, oh, we told you crowd and the, well, still police brutality crowd. And then there's the even louder crowd of he's innocent. So we already have a narrative that's out there that people are sticking with no matter what comes out. And then you have 2 opposing forces going at it. And it's really like, it's tough.
Yeah, it's real tough. And, being, like I said, earlier, being Black and a police officer's shoes is very difficult, especially during these times. Because, the Black community, some people may feel that you are against them. And, that's obviously not the case. I am there to help wherever I can help. Whenever I'm needed, I am there. Regardless of, and that's something people also have to understand too. There are a lot of good police officers out there. And I would beg to say that maybe 3%, 3 to 4% of the world's police force are, maybe those bad apples. That leaves a whole 96% or 97% of them that are good, and police officers, they don't call, I have seen the sayings are, we're not worried about, what color you are when you're dying. We're trying to, bring you back, So that's something that people need to be cognizant as well. And, keep those, when you have those unconscious thoughts or subconscious thoughts, recognize them that, hey, police officers are all bad. Sure, this is the profession that they've chosen. Now, that being said, I've also seen people like, well, that's the profession they've chosen. So, when police officers do die, I'm like, nobody chooses to die. Yeah, sure, I chose to be a police officer, which possibly could put my life in danger, but I didn't choose to, to die. No one chooses that. And so I think people need to also keep that in mind. As far as, also being Black, I didn't choose to be Black. That's something I had control of. So also keeping that in mind as well. And, I think there's a lot to go in, there's a lot more that goes into the conversation.
Do you want to say anything before we close this out, Tyler? I just got one more thing to say, but.
Oh, I gotta ask you guys a question now.
Oh, let's
how do you, coming back to sports, how do you guys feel about, the Big Ten being postponed and whatnot? And then the SEC and the ACC are all playing, and even the AAC is still playing. How do you feel about that?
I'm sure you're happy that you don't get to catch an L 19 out of 20 years. But go Bucks, OH. But no, seriously, I mean, we can end this lighthearted. I mean, that sucks. I still believe it. If there's another conference playing football, I don't see in any way, shape, or form that Ohio State does not take the field. I mean, it may take to pull a Notre Dame, pull out of a conference, flex that muscle. You get that money anyway.
But here's the thing: even in the same state, Cincinnati's playing football. So why isn't Ohio State playing football?
Yeah, and that's been brought up. You see a lot of people talk about it. In Ohio, you have high school football, Cincinnati's playing football, but Ohio State cannot play football. The biggest program in the state. It's I hate it. I hate it so much.
I coach high school, football, and they actually postponed our season in Michigan till the spring as well. So,
I blame
everybody's
Michigan's governor as well, because word came out that she spoke to some people to cancel the season.
They also said that she's the lone governor holding up the Big Ten. So I'm not sure how true that is, but I'm like, man, you're ruining everything.
Tyler gets football. How's Notre
Dame's
chances in the ACC?
I just think not every team is built like Notre Dame, so not every team can just join any conference they want and succeed. So it's not that easy for every other team, so I do feel for you guys. But I don't think anybody's going to miss the Big Ten, so I think we just keep this thing rolling.
I don't know.
Well, I'm not going to miss.
Still hasn't dropped out of school.
That's true. I'm not going to miss any football. Luckily, me moving to Georgia, I get to watch. I don't get to watch because I have to work the games. But I still get to be around football because Georgia's playing and stuff. So I'll get to catch a little bit of football, college football at least.
Make sure you let them know to check out Blacksheep Podcast here in Ohio.
Okay,
absolutely. Hey, spread the word. Let them join the flock.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Hey, I want to close off with this. One thing that I love about the military that it taught me is it is America at its purest form. You have guys from all over the country, all different races, all different backgrounds, and we are, the old military moniker, we're all one color. Marines used to say we're all green. And that's what the founding fathers had for everybody. I know they weren't perfect. They still owned slaves while saying everybody was equal. We can acknowledge that fault, but in theory, they wanted every American to essentially be able to come together. We have to be able to come together.
Yes.
Shake off our differences, and let's move forward towards prosperity. We have a common goal. America provides opportunities not many other places do. I've been there. I've seen countries with my eyes deployed that are not anywhere near as amazing as this one. So please, like I've said it a couple times, go outside, talk to your neighbor. Let's be better people together. Thank you guys, man. This was, last minute, we had to get this out.
I just want to say shout out to you for becoming a police officer and protecting your city. I know it's a hard time. You guys don't get a lot of love right now, but I just want to give some love. We appreciate you guys, every single cop.
Appreciate it, man.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for coming on doing this with us.
I always appreciate your guys' support, and I'll make sure that I'll get some of my guys to follow and keep up with you guys.
That's what's
up. There we go. Hey, again, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We'll be on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Hey, check us out. Thank you for tuning in.